Welcome back to Lergle Stories. My name's Logan, and I'm glad you're here. Today, we're on the chapters 13 and 14 of Anthony Ant. And after this one, there's only chapters 15 and 16. So this is the second last video for Anthony Ant. So we're going to find out how everything turns out in the end very soon. I'm excited. Big thank you to Austin Macauley Publishers for letting us read this book today. Remember that you can subscribe to Lergle Stories so that you don't miss any videos. If you haven't caught up with Anthony Ant yet, check out Lergle Stories' channel and you can catch up with all the other videos there. So last time, Anthony had gone to the restaurant to get a quick snack while he was waiting for the food delivery for Queen Anastasia. And while he was there, he recognized the ants that had bullied and attacked him. So he stormed over and confronted them and told them what disgraces they all were. And everybody in the restaurant cheered. He was feeling very good about himself. And he has his pocketbook back, which is what he was looking for this whole time. So, on to chapter 13, which is called The Dawn Raid. With Queen Anastasia's food supplies safely delivered and secure in the vault, Anthony could breathe a sigh of relief. He decided to have an early night, as it had been quite a stressful day in the end, even though everything had a good outcome. Anthony was in a very deep sleep when he was suddenly awakened by the blasting sound of a fire alarm. He jumped out of bed and glanced at the time. It was 3 a.m., very early in the morning. He pulled on his jacket and rushed to open his door to see what was happening. The main corridor was filled with smoke. Anthony could hear lots of voices coming from all directions. He quickly thought what to do. He decided to head towards the Queen's quarters, as it was the Queen he was there to protect. Anthony raced along the main corridor in the direction of the Queen's quarters. It seemed that the smoke wasn't quite as bad down this end of the colony. He was slightly relieved, as this suggested that the fire was at the other end. However, there was something strange about the atmosphere, or rather stillness, at this end that bothered Anthony. Why aren't there more ants around here? And where are the guards and special soldier ants? He wondered. Just at that point, he heard somebody whispering. "Keep quiet and crawl along here with me," said the voice. Anthony froze and flattened himself against the dark shadows of the wall so that he would not be seen. He gingerly peered out as the whispering was coming closer. Anthony immediately drew back against the wall and took a large intake of breath. "Oh my goodness," he said to himself. "Red fire ants," he muttered under his breath. Red fire ants are reddish in colour. They are aggressive and have a very painful sting. It's said that the pain of their sting is equivalent to a fire burn, hence the name of this ant. Many of them came over from the USA and Asia in imported plant pots, and they have grown in numbers since. Anthony was racking his brains as to what to do. He knew all too well that these ants were truly dangerous and could take over the colony, carry off the Queen's eggs, seize the baby ants, and also take slaves as well as capturing or even killing their queen. The red fire ants are the other ants' worst enemies, and Antony had to do something very quickly indeed. He decided to try and follow the 2 red fire ants to see exactly what they were up to. Antony kept well back in the shadows and was as quiet as a mouse. He wasn't exactly sure how quiet a mouse was, as he'd never been that close to one in case he was trodden on or eaten, but it was an expression he'd heard somewhere. The 2 red ants had stopped and were looking at the entrance to the Queen's quarters. Antony wondered why there were no guards or soldier ants anywhere. He could now hear what the red ants were saying very clearly. Right, our men will be in there now, keeping everyone quiet and under guard. The rest of this colony is fighting the fire at the other end, which is what we wanted to happen, said one of the red ants, smiling broadly. Yeah, it's good that we know how to start big, powerful fires when we need to, said the other red ant with a chuckle. Red ants are obsessed with electricity cables. They chew them, causing massive blackouts and fires. This was obviously what they had done tonight, as few lights that were left on at night had indeed gone out. Antony was at a loss as to what to do. He needed a brainwave. Then it suddenly happened. Antony knew that there was a small side tunnel used only for extreme emergencies. In fact, he couldn't even remember it being used ever. But anyway, he was going to use it now. At the end of the tunnel, he would be able to get out of the colony and into the woods. This was where he needed to be urgently. Antony felt his way to the tunnel without disturbing the ongoing conversation of the 2 red fire ants, who were now gloating about taking over the colony and boasting how easy it had been so far. Antony soon reached the exit door with a special fire bar across the middle. He was a little worried about pushing this door open in case it made too much noise and that the fire ants would hear it. Anyway, he thought if he took it slowly, he could muffle the sound, and he was quite away from them now, so he just got on with it. With all his strength, Antony carefully and gently pushed down the bar and leant his slender body against it until it started to move. He only needed a tiny gap to get through. He slid round the door frame tentatively, still hanging on to the door so it would not bang to. He gently closed it behind him. He'd made it. Thank goodness he's out. Chapter 14, The Rescue. Antony was now rushing around the woods, making twit-twoo and hoo-hoo sounds in a desperate attempt of trying to find his friend, Ted, the tawny owl. As his owl impressions weren't working too well, he gave up and resorted to calling him. "Ted, where are you?" Antony called as loudly as he dared. After his 3rd attempt, Antony was about to give up, as time was of the essence and he was getting nowhere fast. He was also starting to get panicky and he could feel his breathing altering as though he couldn't get enough air. Ants don't have lungs, just tiny holes all over their bodies where oxygen enters and carbon dioxide leaves through the same holes. So this feeling must have been very strange for Anthony under this sort of stress. Suddenly, there was a great fluttering sound and a bit of a crash landing, and there was Ted. He straightened himself up on a nearby log and leant forward to look closely at Anthony, who was now jumping up and down, just wanting Ted to listen. "What's up, mate? I was just eyeing up some juicy supper. But not to worry. How can I help you? It's not like you to be out this early in the morning, Anthony." Anthony blurted out what had happened and was getting extremely flustered while explaining. Ted told him to calm down or he would have a cardiac arrest on his hands, and then he would never know what he wanted. Anthony did calm down and sat on some soft leaf mold to make him feel more relaxed. He asked Ted what could be done. "What can be done is simple," retorted Ted. "I will get Travis, my mate, and we will have a lovely feast on these chewy red fire ants. They will be out of your way in no time, Anthony." Ted hooted for Travis, and there he was, sitting next to Ted within seconds. Anthony said this wasn't possible because the red fire ants would sting them to death and they wouldn't be able to stand it. Both Ted and Travis confirmed that red fire ants would not pose a problem to them as they ate insects all the time. "Anthony, most of them will run off anyway when they see us coming. Believe me," remarked Ted convincingly. So the plan was that Anthony would lead Ted and Travis to the tunnel that Anthony came out of and see how they could prevent disaster from happening inside the colony. It was immediately apparent once they arrived at the entrance that neither Ted nor Travis could enter the tunnel as they were far too big. Ted had another idea. "Let's give them a treat of some food," he said with a knowing smile. "What?" shrieked Anthony, thinking Ted had now gone mad. "I have a large bowl of rice that a very kind lady left out for me, which I haven't eaten yet, and I know this will do the trick," yawned Ted as he quickly flew to the nearby tree to retrieve it. Ted was starting to get sleepy now, as he had been up all night. "How will rice help?" Anthony inquired. Travis explained to Anthony, while Ted was gone for a minute, that the red fire ants love rice. The unfortunate thing is that they gorge on it and even carry it back home for other red fire ants. But it eventually expands their stomachs and they die. "Quite unbelievable, really," Travis said in a matter-of-fact tone. As soon as Ted returned, Anthony went back into the tunnel and sprinkled the rice near to the Queen's quarters, where he had seen the 2 red fire ants. He waited in the shadows to see if anything happened. It took about 5 minutes when 2 or 3 red fire ants suddenly appeared from the Queen's main entrance. Anthony could not believe his eyes as they immediately started to eat the rice. Then several more red fire ants came out of the entrance and joined in the feast. The door to the Queen's quarters was now wide open. Anthony took a chance and quickly scurried in. Nobody noticed. The red fire ants were too busy eating. Once inside, he checked around to see if anything had happened. He immediately saw Queen Anastasia and Special Advisor Aranant all tied up in the corner. There were now no red fire ants here at all. They had all been called to have a feast on the rice. Anthony silently closed the main entrance door and made sure it was locked securely. He then began untying Queen Anastasia and Special Advisor Aranant. They were both very relieved and couldn't thank Anthony enough for saving them. Anthony quickly went to check the Queen's eggs and the nursery. Although staff had been locked in with the babies in the egg store, Anthony was able to release them. None had been taken and everyone was fine. The red fire ants had just been about to start their plan of removing them all from the colony. That's a close one. Anthony had made it just in time. He didn't know what had happened to the fire at the other end of the colony, but at least he had protected Queen Anastasia. This was all that mattered to him. Wow, very exciting stuff going on. It was very brainy of the owls to think of the rice trick. I think that's why owls are seen as wise animals, because they think up of such clever tricks. I very much hope that the red fire ants are distracted for long enough for everybody to get away. But we will have to wait and see. Until next time, I'll see you later. Bye!